Hello, everybody. My name is John Munno. I am the wedding photographer and owner of John Munno Weddings in Southbury, Connecticut, a photography studio of distinction serving all of Connecticut and the surrounding areas. It is February 2024 and it is booking season. It's a time when brides and grooms kind of realize, it's time to get going here to book my photographer. And so one of the questions that comes up the most, the first question is, how many hours of coverage do I need? I see so many couples struggle with that question of how many hours of coverage I need. And that is the topic of our discussion today. So weddings are all different. There's no one way to have a wedding. Some people have short weddings, some people have long weddings, some are in one location, some are multiple locations, some have ceremonies at the venue, some have church ceremonies. So that's why there's not one kind of wedding. And so when I meet with my clients, I find out their wedding vision, find out about the needs for their wedding day, and customize packages that fit them perfectly. So on average, the part of the wedding that is, I call it baked in, or the part that's quite fixed, is the end part of the wedding for many people, which is usually ceremony and cocktail hour reception. That's often determined by the venue, and the venue says this is the time, and that's it. So you don't have a lot of flexibility often to change that. So the average time for a reception, and reception includes cocktail hour, and then it includes the reception to follow. The average is 5 to 6 hours. Some are 4, that's kind of rare. Some are 6, that is not as common, but average is 5 to 5.5 hours, including the cocktail hour. So if you're going to add a ceremony to that, usually it's going to be another hour. And the reason I say another hour is because if your ceremony starts at 5, do you want me to show up as a photographer at 5 o'clock? No, because already people are lining up, guests are arriving, these things are happening. So I usually budget an hour for coverage because I usually show up a half an hour early to start shooting and being ready. So sometimes couples say, I would just want a wedding for 4 hours. And it's like it doesn't really happen. When you start figuring this time in, you realize the minimum often for ceremony and reception, minimum is almost 6 hours. Rare occasions less than that, but pretty much 6 hours. Because we have a 5-hour reception, we had an hour of ceremony coverage, we're at 6 hours. So if you only want coverage of your ceremony to the end of reception, you're looking at 6 hours of coverage. Sometimes you can shave a little off the back end of the wedding, maybe if you want to fit a budget, so you can cut off an hour or so off the back end. I don't recommend cutting too much off because you don't want to rush coverage of your reception. But if you want to trim a little off, that's an option. So now the question becomes, what can we add to that? So there are lots of things that you can add to your wedding to make it longer or to have more coverage. One of the things that you might want to add is what's called a first look. And a first look is where the bride and groom will see each other for the first time. And after that, it's often followed by portraits. The nice thing about doing a first look in portraits is you can get all your pictures done before the ceremony, and then from ceremony on, you just have a great time. And you can enjoy the cocktail hour, and you don't have to fill up that cocktail hour with taking pictures. So a lot of the weddings that I do a first look with the bride and groom, followed by portraits of the bride and groom. So usually I budget an hour for that, and then I have bridal party photo for about a half an hour, and then family photos for about a half an hour. So that's a 2-hour block of time. So if we have a 6-hour wedding, let's say from reception ceremony through the end, and then we add 2 hours for that for a first look in portraits, hey, we're right up to an 8-hour package at this point. You see how that kind of works? Now, if you don't want a first look, but you still want to get pictures before the ceremony, then I'll usually do 45 minutes for bridal party, or 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, let's say for bride and bridesmaids. Then we can do groom and groomsmen, and we just stagger them so that they don't see each other. So that would be like adding an hour to an hour and a half. So if we have a 6-hour wedding, for example, ceremony to reception, we had portraits before that for brides and bridesmaid, groom and groomsmen, we can now turn it into a 7-hour wedding. The other thing that people often will add to, and so that's for a ceremony that's at the reception. Now, if you have a church ceremony, basically that's going to be an hour, because an hour and a half if we had coverage before the ceremony a little bit. Usually a Catholic ceremony is about an hour. So if you say have a 5-hour reception, we add a ceremony to that without travel time. Now we're looking at 6 hours travel time. We're probably about 7 hours if we had a ceremony to that. The other thing that people will often add to a wedding is getting ready shots or bride prep. Not necessarily makeup and all that, but generally having a bride get into her dress and putting on earrings and shoes and beautiful pictures with bridesmaids and candid photos and mom and those kinds of things. They're really touching moments and they're beautiful to add. Maybe you want to do a first look with your dad. That's another thing that can be added. So if you want to add getting ready photos, usually the minimum is an hour and a half. That is with hair and makeup done, bride getting into her dress, and then pictures with bridesmaids. That's an hour and a half. If bride wants to be in robe shots or jammy shots on the bed, those kind of things, I usually add about 20 minutes to half an hour, because there's time to take photos and then there's time for all the girls to get dressed. So if we had a 6-hour wedding and then we added, say, a first look in portraits before the ceremony, we now have 8-hour wedding. If we had portraits if we had getting ready pictures of bride and bridesmaids, etc., now we're at 9.5 hours of the wedding. The other thing that people may want to add is groomsmen getting ready. So groomsmen getting ready is usually about an hour. That's usually pretty quick. So that's groom and groomsmen. So if we add that into the equation, now we're at about the 10-hour mark. If we add pictures of groom getting ready, bride getting ready, first look in portraits, ceremony, reception, to the end. So now we're at about a 10-hour mark. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Usually the minimum that I do for weddings is 6. The maximum can be 10 to 12 hours. If we have multiple locations, we have to factor in travel time. But usually 6 to 8 hours to 10 will usually accommodate most weddings from beginning to smaller weddings to the end, including larger weddings. So what I did is I put together, just for you to see here, I have on my website, I have a planning section of my website called Wedding Planning. There's a thing called a Wedding Planning Timeline. So this lays out all the different parts of your wedding that you may want to include. See, so we have getting ready, groom prep, what's included. We have timing of 1 hour. Then we have getting ready, bride prep, 1.5 to 2 hours, and this shows all the different options that are included. We have first look pictures, portraits. We have portraits before the ceremony, and all that. So you could go through this little timeline. You can say, yes, I want to add this. I want getting ready bride, and these are the ones I want. So you can go down through the column, add up the column here, and then at the bottom there's a little total sheet. So this is like your little spreadsheet to help you know what kind of package that you need. So you don't have to scratch your head, or you have a particular budget in mind, but it doesn't work with the actual packages that you want to cover you for your wedding day. So I hope that helps you to understand a little bit more about what kind of coverage you want. So you have to include travel time. If you are traveling from one place to another, that needs to get factored in as well to get your coverage figured out. So I'll help all my couples with that. When they meet with me, I take them through their wedding planning, what they want to include in their wedding day. I'll help and guide them on what package will be best and the amount of coverage that they need. So I hope that helps you. I hope you know now what you need. And if you don't, feel free to give me a call. I'm always here to help you and help my couples through this process. It's all included free of charge in my packages. So thank you for your time. Happy wedding planning. John Munno Weddings in Southbury, Connecticut, johnmunnoweddings.com.